That's the THX sound. I like the tension resolution. A little bit disconcerting.
Like a palate cleanser. Like, wake up, stop talking to one another.
And then all of a sudden we're resolved on this really nice ending.
It's like a gentle rub on the back. Everything's going to be okay. It'll be online soon. I think it's played on middle C, which is kind of chord that everyone's most used to hearing.
Although I think it's been pitched down over the years. I believe it was stereo and then they brought it into mono. It's attention grabbing.
You've been downloading something and it suddenly stops and it drops into your download folder.
Now, this is telling me that I've done something wrong.
The decay is really, really final.
It's in a lower frequency. It's very short.
It is literally like a wall.
More of a general notification sound.
Very, very similar. Same applies. It's quite a sudden decay to kind of show you that you can't go any further. Skeuomorphism is when we take a design function and use it to mimic something in the real world.
So maybe a better way of saying is this sound has been designed to replicate the expression of throwing trash out. So that's the Windows 95 startup sound created by Brian Eno.
It's kind of an opening of a window. You start looking through something, and I think if you remember, there was kind of lots of windows that kind of faded out. It's kind of taken that visual cue and kind of recreated this kind of reverberation of that window continuing. It's Triumph, but of mice.
Work is over. Yay. It's a long one. Where did you get this from?
This is the sound of two modems actually having a conversation. That sound is not exactly the same every time. I've actually looked at the blueprint of how this sound works, and it genuinely is a conversation. Like, one will say one thing, and that will lead another to say another thing. It's weirdly cute.
It's the interval 158.
It was never actually intended to be on the iPhone. It was developed for what was going to be an application called Sound Jam, probably one of the most heard sounds in the last few years. This one became the default because I think Bell Labs were doing a bunch of research on what ringtones would get people's attention and distract them from what they were doing, and get them to pick up their telephone. The range of the human voice is the range that you hear, and they also found that sounds that went from their quietest moment to the loudest moment within 3 to 5 seconds were easiest to grab a user's attention. So in 2009, this was heard 1.8 billion times a day, which is 20,000 times a second.
That melody comes from an old Spanish composer,
Francisco Tárrega, who only ever played in front of very small groups of people and normally his friends. So it's ironic that it's become one of the most listened to pieces of music in history. The winner of a Make Our Ringtone competition.
If you look at the logo, a dot, a T, and then 3 dots. If you look at it backwards, it actually kind of, sounds like what that looks like. Do-do-do-do-do. Yeah. Those sounds are human sounds. They're voices. They're blowing into ketchup bottles.
It's speech bubbles underwater. Obviously, Skype's about conversation. It's about people getting in touch with one another and speaking. And the way they visualize that is through the speech bubble. Obviously, in the air, you blow a bubble, it doesn't make any sound. But underwater, bubbles have a very distinct sound. This sound kind of descends. It feels like it's in a bubble that's kind of popping and being sucked down. So what I really like about this is the way they've tied it in as a duet.
The sound going up for sending and going down for receive.
Like semiotically ties in with what's actually happening.
Kind of a playful back and forth.
It's quite unobtrusive. It's quite... You can come back to me when you're ready.
Yeah, Facebook just redid like a year or so ago all of their sounds. Rumor has it that the old sound was actually a major 7 chord, which when played on the keyboard is FACE. It can cut through if you're listening to music, I think, in a way that's effective.
It feels like someone's like, psst, and then the but is someone's writing. Another example of skeuomorphism.
Those are very tactile sounds. I think originally those sounds were very important for people to get that feedback and understand. I think, less and less do we need those types of sounds.
I think they made the decision to go with a more old school typewriter because it helped users more. It's just so in your face. I found it really funny when I found out that apparently an eighth of the space on Sonic the Hedgehog went to making sure you heard that, which just shows how important marketing is. So this is the PlayStation 1 sound. I think they're trying to take you into another world.
It's calming in a space vibe kind of way. So they moved to more of a orchestral tuning.
Instantly, there's this sense of community, and I think that's not a coincidence. So on PlayStation 3, we had a lot of people connecting. It was no longer just me in my front room. It was me and whoever else was online, and you can hear that. Very much tracking exactly what's going on. Just at the end, you just hear this kind of breath. And again, I think they must have been thinking the same thing as PlayStation, is that was a big leap forward in connectivity. You have to bring humans into the equation because they're now having conversations online via an Xbox.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
That guy's pretty excited about EA Sports.
This is the Intel sound, which is obviously the most heard Sonic logo in the world ever.
I think something like 90% of people recognize that sound as Intel. A lot of people think of it as 4 notes, but there's actually that first note, so it's 5 altogether.
There are actually 20 sounds on the very first note, one of which is an anvil.
More.
There have been 7 MGM lions.
And I believe there was no sound originally, and then they re-recorded a lion roaring. That dates back, way back to radio. They're still consistently using it across television today.
Well, they had this issue where the announcers were rubbish at playing it, or one play it louder than the other, so they actually ended up building machines to play these 3 notes. They actually became so important that they all had backup machines in case the main machine broke.
It sounds like it's expressing a gavel to me, right?
And it's actually the sound of a jail door closing. Cool.
Okay, cut. For many of the sounds that you hear on your computers, on your phones, there's a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of love that goes into the creation of those sounds. Sometimes we're looking at a few weeks, but other times we're looking at, a few months.
I think we're going to get into that era where we're no longer sentimental about the original telephone ringing. It will become sentimental about the Facebook ring or the Skype ring, and there'll be pastiches to that.
That was a lot.
It's a lot of sound.